Welcome back everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to smoke beef ribs, pork ribs and lamb ribs, and we're also going to see if I can get them finished at around the same time. All right, we're going to be using the Bronco Pro today because it's got a nice big cooking grate. So we'll open it up, take the cooking grate off, and then we'll remove our heat deflector. And because the charcoal basket's so tall in the Bronco Pro, we can get away with just filling it halfway up. So you want to fill that up with either lumped charcoal or briquettes. Then we'll bury a fire lighter in there and light it up. Alright, so while those briquettes are catching light, we're going to prepare our beef ribs. We'll get to our pork and lamb a little bit later in the video. All I really need to do to these is take a little bit of that excess fat off the top. If you've seen my previous videos, you know that I've just been leaving my beef ribs pretty much as they are. I've even been leaving that bottom membrane on, but have a look at these, some beautiful marbling in there. As usual, pick these up from my butcher at Austral Meat, and all I'm going to do here is just trim a little bit of that top fat off. And honestly, that's as far as I need to go with these. So what I'll do now is just give them a light coat in yellow mustard. This is just going to help our rubs stick to the meat. And it's also good because if you see any yellow left over after you've seasoned them, you know you've missed that spot and you could do with a little bit more seasoning in that area. Alright, so if you've got a favourite barbecue rub, go ahead and use that. I'm going to be using our Steak Shooter Spicy and Beef Bounce. I'm going to go down with a layer of our Steak Shooter Spicy first. The Steak Shooter Spicy is a bit of a finer rub, and then I like to go over with Beef Bounce just to help get that really nice bark. And if you don't have any barbecue rubs, salt, pepper, garlic always does the trick. And then we'll just mop up any rub we've got on the cutting board. And these are now ready to go once our smoke is ready. All right, it's been about 15 minutes since we got that fire lighter in there, and as you can see, our briquettes have caught light nicely. So what we can do now is shut our lid, open up both of our vents, and bring this up to just below our target temperature, which for this cook, I'm going to look to hold it at around the 250 to 275 Fahrenheit or 120 to 135 Celsius range. All right, now our smoke is up to temperature. We're going to open it up, get some smoking wood on. If you've got a favourite smoking wood, go ahead and use that. I'm going to be using some Mile as it's a good all-rounder. So we're going to get a chunk straight on where the fire's burning, one off to the side that will catch light later in the cook, and another off to the side as well. And then we'll get our heat deflector in, then our cooking grate can go back in, then our beautiful beef ribs. And we'll shut the lid and let these start smoking away. Alright, so now our beef ribs on, I really don't have to worry about much else apart from some fire management. If I need to increase my temperature, I'm going to open our intake vent up a little bit. If I need to decrease temperature, I'm going to shut it down a little bit. It's super easy in the drum and it doesn't take long to find that sweet spot where your drum's just going to sit there all day at the same temperature. I'm going to be leaving these beef ribs unwrapped for the whole cook, but if you want to wrap your beef ribs partway through the cook to speed it up, that's completely up to you. So I reckon I'll be looking at around a 7 to 10 hour cook. It might take a little bit longer, it might be a little bit quicker, but we're just going to keep an eye on these beef ribs throughout the cook. So we'll let these beef ribs smoke away, we'll continue to check on them, and then later in the video we're going to get started on the pork and the lamb ribs. Alright, we're creeping up onto 3 hours into this beef rib cook. They are looking good, got some good drawback on the bones. Our bark is starting to set, still got a couple more places where it just needs to come a little bit further, but these are still very tight. We wouldn't even be halfway into this cook. I reckon we've still got 5 to 6 hours left, so we'll let these go for another hour or two, then we'll come back to check on them and get started on these pork ribs. Alright, we're about 4 hours into this beef rib cook. These are looking really nice. That bark is really coming along now. We're probably close to, if not around halfway into this cook. So we're going to check our internal temperature. So we're at about 168 Fahrenheit, or what's that, around 76 degrees Celsius. We want these to go all the way up to around 96 to 99 degrees Celsius, or 205 to 210 Fahrenheit. So I reckon we've still got another 3 to 4 hours left. So we'll close our lid and get stuck into these pork ribs. All right, so we've got a nice meaty rack of baby back ribs here. And the first thing we're going to do is take this bottom membrane off. Because with pork ribs, once you've sliced them at the end when they're done, you tend to bite from the side. So you definitely want to be taking that bottom membrane off, in my opinion. So we're just going to start with a butter knife. I'm going to get it in around the third bone from the end. Just want to get it in there. Once you've started peeling it off, just get right through to the other side, peel that end off, grab some paper towel. You can grip that membrane a lot easier, and then you should hopefully be able to get it all off in one hit. And then we can just trim up this little bit of excess on the end. That end is really thin, so I'm just going to face that up there. That's looking good now, so we'll turn it over and we just want to take some of that excess fat off here. Alright, I'm happy with these baby backs. Let's season them up. Again, I'm just going to start by giving them a light coat in yellow mustard. And this time, we're going to go down with a base coat of my honey soy slammer. And then we're going to top it off with just a normal steak shooter. And we'll flip it over and do the same. We'll press that all in. We'll get our edges with the excess we've got on the cutting board. Now these are ready to go. I reckon we're looking at a 3 to 4 hour cook on these, so let's get them in the smoker. Alright, so now our pork ribs are on. I want them to develop some really nice colour before we wrap them. That's going to take around 2 hours. Our lamb ribs are up next. They're going to take around 2.5 hours to cook. So I reckon we let these pork ribs go for about an hour before we come back and get started on these lamb ribs. Alright, now we've got our lamb ribs. So the first thing I'm going to do is you can just find this seam because we want to get rid of all that top fat. To me, rendered lamb fat doesn't taste any good. A little bit of crispy lamb fat's alright, but it does get quite overpowering. So we're just going to peel this off. That should all come off in one hit. As you can see, that is just thick fat. That's not going to taste very good. And then we just want to trim any excess fat and silver skin off the top and expose some of that meat. Right, now I'm happy with that. Now we'll turn it over, trim off this flap meat. And the membrane on lamb ribs can be a little bit finicky, so we're just going to score it. And then again, we're just going to give it a nice light coat in some yellow mustard. And this will be the first video ever I actually get to use all my rubs. We're going to do a base coat of garlic galls and top it off with lamb layup. Just get our edges with any of the rub we've spilt on the cutting board. And these are good to go in the smoker. Alright, so we'll open our smoker. We'll have another check of these beef ribs while we're here. And these are sitting right around 175 Fahrenheit or around 80 Celsius. These pork ribs are starting to get some nice colour, but they still need a little bit longer. So we'll get our lamb ribs in right here. So I reckon our beef ribs are around 2 to 2.5 hours away from being done. Our pork ribs, I'll let them go for another hour or so before I wrap them. And then we want to let our lamb ribs go for about an hour to an hour and a half before we wrap them as well. So we'll shut our lid and let these continue cooking away. Right, so it's been a bit over an hour since we got these lamb ribs on. Starting to get some nice drawback on them bones. Got some beautiful colour on these pork ribs. I reckon we're ready to wrap them. And then beef ribs are feeling nice and soft. I reckon they will almost be done, if not done now. So I'm just going to have a probe around. A little bit of tightness up there and in the middle. They're sitting right around 203 Fahrenheit or 94, 95 Celsius, I think that is. So I reckon we'll let them go for a little bit longer, maybe only another half an hour. But for now, we're going to get these pork ribs out to wrap them. Alright, so we'll take the pork ribs out. I've just got 2 layers of foil. We've got some butter down already. We'll get the pork ribs meat side down on top of that. Keep it nice and simple. More butter on the underside. I'm going to get some of my Hookshot barbecue sauce in there. We'll wrap them up nice and tight. And then we'll get them back in the smoker. So our pork ribs are going to go back in, meat side down. I reckon these beef ribs will be another half an hour, so we'll come back to get them out when they're ready, and I reckon that'll be a good time to wrap the lamb ribs as well. Alright, so our pork ribs have been wrapped up for half an hour now. These beef ribs are feeling much better, right where I want them to be. So don't be afraid to give whatever you're smoking, whether it's a brisket, beef ribs, any sort of pulled meats, half an hour extra if you think it needs it. A few degrees and a little bit of extra time can make all the difference. Have a look at them. They look absolutely incredible. But before we get them out, we'll wrap these lamb ribs up. We've got some nice colour to them, some good drawback on the bones. Now again, we've got 2 layers of foil. I've just laid down some beef tallow because I want to maintain a nice savoury flavour to these lamb ribs. I'm going to get some beef tallow on this underside as well. And then we'll wrap them nice and tight. And we'll get them back in the barbecue. Because our lamb ribs are so much thinner, they're only going to take around half an hour to 45 minutes to get nice and tender. So after half an hour, our pork ribs would have been wrapped for an hour, so we'll check on them, and we'll also check on our lamb ribs. But now we can get our beef ribs out. We'll move our lamb and pork ribs up, and then shut our lid and let them keep going. And then our beef ribs, these look and smell amazing. I'm just going to let them sit for 5 minutes just to steam off, stop that cooking process. Then I'm going to wrap them in foil and let them rest until our pork and lamb ribs are done. Alright, our lamb ribs have been wrapped up for a bit over half an hour now. So that means our pork ribs have been wrapped up for a bit over an hour. So let's open both up and check them. I reckon they should be pretty close to ready, if not ready now. And they're feeling nice and soft in between the bones. What are we sitting at? Sitting at about 205 Fahrenheit or 96 Celsius. So I reckon what we can do is turn them over. Some good colour on them. And I'm just going to fold that foil up around them. You can see they got a beautiful bend to them. But I'll get them back in there. I'll check these lamb ribs. That little bone on the end is just going to come off. They're feeling quite nice and soft as well. And they're sitting right around 205 Fahrenheit or 96 Celsius as well. So I'll also turn them over. I'm not going to sauce them though, they're just going to stay nice and savoury. But we'll try and get a bit more colour on top while we give these pork ribs a little coat in some hook shot. Now, if you've got another favourite sauce or glaze, feel free to use that. I'm just going to brush on a little bit of hook shot. Then we'll close the lid, let that sauce set for around 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll come back. Alright, and these are now ready to come out, so we'll bring them over to the cutting board. Have a look at the colour on them. Alright, so we've got our 3 racks of ribs here. Let us know what your favourite is in the comments below. But for now, let's slice them up. Beautiful, tender, juicy, barky beef rib. They're hard to beat. Nice juicy pork rib. And then some nice tender lamb ribs. Let's have a try. All right, we'll try some of that lamb rib first. So tender, full of flavour, and they're so cheap as well. All right, we'll go the pork rib next. As you can see, you can just bite that meat away from the bone. So good. All right, and then one of my favourites, the beef rib. Absolutely incredible. Well, there you have it. There's how to smoke beef ribs, pork ribs, and lamb ribs. If you've got any questions about any of the 3, don't hesitate to ask them in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. But for now, that's the end of the video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.